You're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a what?
I mean, we're in a good position of having had Joe Rowling provide us with fantastic source material.
All you have to do is read the books to kind of, I think, sense the place, the sort of tone and atmosphere, which I thought she'd done, you know, and she continues to do so brilliantly.
In the very first film, Joe came to the set when we were designing, coming up with a lot of the designs, and had a look through everything to make sure that we weren't, you know, wildly off.
Joe created this world. We wanted to stay true to it, organic to it. And that's been our mission.
All that vision is born very much from the book, part of the universe that first Chris and now Alfonso has built upon.
Mr. Potter, our new celebrity.
From the get-go, what I was aiming was serving the material.
I think that's everything of importance. Let's begin the feast.
That is very good.
Of the 5 books that are published, writing Azkaban was the easiest, and in some ways I think that shows. Although it's a tricky plot in some ways, as Alfonso will really appreciate, and Steve Clovis, the scriptwriter, will really appreciate, because they've kind of had to negotiate the same ascent that I had to negotiate. At the same time, I felt I was really given space to do that, so it was an enjoyable process.
The moment that I read the book, I just felt so connected. For me, everything was so clear in how it should look as a film and how it should be told as a film. And then having the luxury of working with Steve Clovis, that he's fantastic.
We tried to discover the best way to convey what Joe was expressing on the page in movie terms. And that led us to some interesting places.
You deal with so many abstract concepts, like the time traveling. It's such an abstract thing. And actually, it's so difficult that I even trying to explain it right now.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard.
It is hard, because you just go in circles.
But then in the book, everything makes just perfect sense.
I loved watching that part of the film. I loved watching the time turner sequence. There was just enough humour in it. Ow! Just enough near misses. Dumbledore's comment when they come back is just spot on. It's perfect.
We did it.
Did what? Good night.
I got to Scotland to meet with Joe. One, I think it's important for Joe to feel comfortable, and two, I think Joe is a wonderful source of information, is incredibly generous with us.
And I remember when she walked into the door, I thought, for some reason I expected to meet someone who was like 70. Joe walked in, she was younger than I was. We liked the same films and we liked the same music, and it was just an immediate connection.
Wicked.
When she met Alfonso, he talked about his vision for the film, talked through many ideas.
Alfonso was mentioned very early on, and I was really enthusiastic about the idea. And I loved Y tu mamá también. Alfonso just obviously understands teenage boys backwards, and, you know, they're 13 now.
These kids were starting to take themselves seriously as actors, so they were willing to explore more emotional territories.
He was their friend, and he betrayed them. He was their friend!
I was so lucky that I had them so raw and so willing to go there.
I think all 3 of them give their best performances to date.
Poor Malfoy.
He deserves it.
But he deserves it.
But Tom took that punch really well.
He
really did. He did a good job on that.
Emma was looking forward for that moment, and I remember Tom telling Emma, "No, if you want, just hit me, just hit me."
What a hero.
The universe is the universe that you created. You know, every corner of that place.
Everyone.
Everyone?
Everyone. Where they are, what they're doing, every minute of every day.
Brilliant.
This was a map of the world. This drawing is Joe Rowling's drawing that she executed in just a few minutes. As you see, it has all the principal ingredients. The Dark Forest is here, the Whomping Willow, the Quidditch pitch, Hogwarts Castle itself, the Black Lake is there, the Perimeter Road, Hogsmeade Village. She had a very, very exact and precise understanding of her world and her creation. She knew exactly the relationship between all the elements. So she was able to give it to us, and that became our Bible.
We needed a place where the kids could see the execution of Buckbeak. And we thought about having a graveyard. And when we consulted Joe about it, he says, no, the graveyard is not there. And I said, why? And then she gave me the whole explanation why the graveyard cannot be there, because it's in a different place of the castle, because it's going to play, and she knows her thing. She knows exactly what's going to happen later. And once I remember having little people in some storyboards, playing some keyboards in an organ in the Great Hall. And Joe said, no, there are no little people in this universe. I says, yes, but it's like Lilliput kind of thing. He says, yes, yeah, it's a lovely image, but they don't make sense in this universe.
I wouldn't let him do it. That's not fair, is it?
It was just about trying to serve as much as possible the story and the spirit of the story, because that's what is great of the book, because the third book is, for me, so abstract and deals with so many different abstract concepts, but at the same time is in the frame of an adventure.
I think it's very, very important that Alfonso Cuarón be allowed to make this his own film.
Action.
It's important that any director come into a situation like this and feel the freedom, feel empowered to make it their own. That's how you're going to get the best films.
Pretty much all the decisions, the visual decisions, were made as we were shooting, not in the cutting room. We made most of those decisions while either in the storyboard or when we blocked the scene with actors, we worked with the actors, and when we decided how to approach the scene.
Oh, well done, Harry. Well done.
What he's done is he's built from the foundations of the book, built from the foundations that Chris Columbus established in the first two, but made it very much his own to serve the story.
God.
Alfonso has very good intuition about what would and wouldn't work. He's put things in the film that, without knowing it, foreshadow things that are going to happen in the final two books. So I really got goosebumps when I saw a couple of those things, because I thought people are going to look back on the film and think those were put in deliberately as clues.
Jo wants the movies to be faithful to the books. On the other hand, she realizes that they're completely different mediums. To be entirely faithful to these movies would be, 16 hours long.
In this film, what I found the theme was about a child trying to find his identity as a teenager.
Sirius Black was and remains to this day Harry Potter's godfather.
We found the theme, and then whatever stuck there we kept, and whatever it didn't, sorry. As long as didn't affect or contradict either the universe or what is to come.
Next? Yeah.
My biggest concern with the visual effects, I want to make sure, absolutely certain that the visual effects would again move up a notch from the last film. First film, we were fairly rushed and the effects were never up to anyone's standards. In the second film, we improved them greatly, and I wanted to take another leap on this film.
We're watching it, and we're saying, wow, look at that hippogriff, it looks really great. And we're just praising the conceptual artists and the CG artists that put it together. And then someone says, yes, but don't forget who imagined it in the first place. And here she is.
I think it's important to say I didn't invent a hippogriff. I invented that hippogriff, but the creature, the hippogriff, as you know, exists in folklore and in mythology, so that's not my creation. But I really thought hard about this, because it could have been in the book, it could have been an absurdity, and indeed it really could have been in the film as well. But you made him a real creature.
There are not that many iconographic representations of hippogriffs, and that's something that we discovered is very interesting. There are sphinx, there are several sphinx, or you see creatures that are half bird and half cat, a lot of different things, but for hippogriffs actually it was hard to find.
I knew that because I went looking.
Yeah.
I went looking, could hardly find any anywhere.
No, I know.
So I felt a complete liberty to invent. I had a nightmare when I was in my teens in which I saw hooded gliding figures. And they could almost be figments of your imagination, of a sort of a tortured imagination, as indeed they are. But you know what I mean? They could be figments of a mentally ill mind. And that was a whole thing that I was exploring in the book. Harry is particularly vulnerable to them, but he's got a much worse past. So he would be, you know, it's not weakness, it's just the fact that he's faced more.
I think Alfonso came up with an amazing design for the Dementors because they truly are unlike anything you've ever seen, but they are a close cousin to maybe what we've all sort of perceived as death over the years, and that's very, very frightening.
I thought the Shrunken Head was very funny. I really liked that.
Little old lady at 12 o'clock!
I thought they fitted in really well. It was a really funny idea. I mean, I said to Steve Clovis many a time, damn it, I wish I'd written that, you know? So, but obviously that's what you want, isn't it? You want to be working with people who come up with great stuff. It's great, you know, when I'm looking around for all these little bits that are completely consistent with the world, but I didn't write them. I wish I had, but there you go.
Gryffindor!
For me, one of the great memories was sitting in a room with Steve Clovis, Joe Rowling, and David Heyman, the producer, and just the four of us for several weeks, discussing Quidditch, talking about what it's going to look like.
I'll say 1, 2, 3, and action. The food appears. Set. 1, 2, 3, action!
That excitement, that sense of making something really special was something that I took with me through the making of the first film and the second film.
The overall process was incredibly open and incredibly creative.
I think in this case, the book and the director were really made for each other. There's a unity about the film, there's a consistency about its tone and its feeling that's very, very enjoyable for me. And that's not a very easy thing for the author of the original material, and I'm completely happy, and what more can I say?
Expecto Patronum! I got a real treat for you today, a great lesson. So follow me.
Gary Giroux is the best animal trainer in the world. He cares about the animals, and he treats them with respect, and he loves the animals, and that's important.
We searched far and wide, worldwide, for the right creatures. Most of these crows we brought from America.
These are African pied crows. Her name is Cheyenne. She's about 3 years old. Typically found throughout Africa. Raised in captivity in California. Hand-raised babies are much better than wild-caught babies. When you first get them, you get them used to your voice, hand-feeding them, take them around with you so they can see everything. You raise them on the movie sets. Come on. Then you start flying them A to B, person to person, and then you start teaching them little tricks.
In Harry Potter 3, we used the bats quite a bit, mainly in Hagrid's hut. They did a lot of flying around. The director, Alfonso, loved them, so he wanted them more and more all the time. And it was quite a challenge training them. Matter of fact, a lot of people didn't think we could do it. We used a food reward system. They loved banana. They became very handleable very quickly. They're really neat. I mean, it was probably my favorite animal that I've ever worked. They were so much fun. We'd fly them in 3 or 4s, and it was very challenging, very much like the owls, flying them the exact same way.
Right, smart bird you got there, Mr. Potter.
This is Wotan. Actually, he's one of the 4 snowy owls we have play the Hedwig character in Harry Potter. Snowy owls, along with the other owls that we see in the film, have all been trained to do different behaviors, which is hard for an owl because owls in general aren't the most intelligent of animals. So they've had to learn to do a lot of things that they wouldn't normally or characteristically do. A lot of people, they see the Harry Potter films and they think that these animals make great pets, and they really don't. They're not domesticated, they're totally wild animals. It seems so simple when you see it in a movie and easy, but in real life, it's a constant 8 to 12-hour day taking care of these animals.
You know the Egyptians used to worship cats?
Yeah, along with a dung beetle.
You're going to meet Crackerjack, who plays Crookshanks. He's not been seen before. This is his first film. But before we film with him, he has to go into hair and makeup because he's beautifully groomed. So we have to make him look manky and disgusting. Basically, every time we groom him, we keep any undercoat that comes out, and then I spend my evenings making little mats. And all I do is the fur that he loses, he sheds, I just roll into a little ball and I attach them to a little tiny clip and then attach the clip to his fur so he looks really scruffy and matted. We then have some jelly and put it on his eyes to make them look all weepy so he's not so handsome. And then we have a little bit of brown eyeshadow that we put on his face to make him just look a little bit more like he's cross. And then he's ready to work. Oh, good boy.
There's a bulldog character, Ripper. We had a great deal of fun with him. To start with, they're basically good-hearted, but they've got some aggression in there. And the work that we had to do with him on the show had a lot to do with aggression. They had the most fun with that behavior the bulldogs did. We have lots of miscellaneous animals in the show, more than on the other shows. The hippo was great fun. She's great old, ancient old pygmy hippopotamus, and she was very cool. She cruised around all day. People react in different ways to having animals on the set. We're sort of a variable element for directors. The rest of the crew usually really gets into the animals.
Before I got into the Harry Potter world, to be honest, I was a little squeamish about bats. I was not a big fan of, you know, I didn't want to go hang out with bats. I did not particularly think rats were that attractive. But what happens is you see these animals and the care, and they're on the set, and they're actually suddenly pretty cute. You sort of become Hagrid. You have a new appreciation for these animals.
You're alive. I'm gonna keep a closer eye on your pets, Ron. Take it away, Ernie. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
The film is just kind of mind-blowing, really.
A lot is introduced in this one. People, places.
Our director has clearly brought his own vision.
It was as if having carte blanche to let your dreams go loose.
Our main thing for Gary Oldman's character was he had to look like he'd been in Azkaban. His eyes very deep set and haunted, teeth rotting.
Are you going to kill me, Harry?
We'd designed these tattoos. His whole body was absolutely covered in tattoos all down his arms, and it's a very, very scary image when you first see that.
His description in the book is he has this sort of like long, kind of greasy hair, and he's got a face like a corpse when you first see him.
We tried a good few looks with him before we ended up with the look we had.
Harry!
And we tried very, very short hair, where over the 12 years I'd gone grey. We tried it bearded, not bearded. It was thoroughly researched.
Gary's amazing. You know, you just put it all on and the character just came.
I look like I've escaped from prison, don't you think?
This heart is where you truly live. This heart here.
This is meant to be Professor Lupin. He's turned into a werewolf. So we did the transformation sequence with prosthetic makeup effects on David Thewlis.
It was hard to do without the cliche teeth coming down, and so we concentrated on the eyes and the actual skin. Alfonso wanted him with 2 big scars down his face so that could follow on to the werewolf, so you could get the connection between the two of them.
I'd never actually done anything with that scale of prosthetics before. To watch yourself transform over the space of 6 hours is just remarkably fascinating, and watch yourself become unrecognisable was exciting.
Action! Nails.
You go as far as you can using the actor because you want the performance. But there's a point where you're going to kill your actor. So obviously you then mutate away from the human and go into the virtual.
When we actually talked about the transformations, you know, we had to consider how Lupin was going to transform into the werewolf.
Most of it was achieved inside the computer with his head turning into the werewolf. That in itself is just exciting, just because of the energy of the creature just kind of transforming through. And then the other main one was Peter Pettigrew.
Tim Spall gave Peter Pettigrew. Pettigrew is the most rat-like character you can imagine.
This was the animatronic rat.
It was making the connection between you know, Peter Pettigrew being the rat, and that to make him look as rat-like as we could.
The wig, we tried to get the texture of the rat, the colour, balding pieces, scaly skin.
And we had the teeth made, little pair of teeth. We wanted him, because he used his hands a lot, and we had little nails made to stick on, so they were like little claws.
The wonderful thing is that as soon as you start putting the character on, any doubts you had about the way you were going to play it, you know, they come together.
Haven't I been a good friend, a good pet? You won't let them give me to the Dementors, will you? I was your rat.
When we were first approached about doing the first Harry Potter, they said it's just some children. And actually, it's turned into a great deal more than just some children.
Come on, move it along, move it along. Yeah, man.
There's a creature that the Dementors, they aren't so much indicated that if they open a door, maybe their fingers can fall apart. But in the other hand, they just need to inhale and they take away your soul. So we wanted to do something that was abstract and metaphysical.
Alfonso had an idea that one of the ways to distinguish them was through their movement.
Dementors don't walk, they float. And so if they float, I guess it was you know, a fairly natural step to say, okay, well, what would happen to the robes? Well, how would they move most effectively?
I was a little hesitant about CG, so I wanted to do everything old school. I wanted to do mirror tricks, and I wanted to do puppets.
We just did the basics of some flying puppets with wind and what effect that had, and it just wasn't working at all. It wasn't anything like Alfonso was thinking.
Alfonso had this idea of putting this thing in the water and seeing how it moved.
There's a great puppeteer in San Francisco called Basil Twist. So he came here to London. What he does is he does puppeteer underwater, and we shot a couple of tests with the mentor floating, slow motion, and running the camera backwards. And it was really beautiful. The only problem was not practical.
We would never be able to do all of that animation within something like a tank. For what we wanted to achieve, it was just way too difficult to do.
We realized at the time that we'd have much more control over what these things look like, how they behaved, how they performed, if you put them in a CGI environment.
Pretty much anything we looked at, any films that may have something similar, really didn't kind of come close. So it was really more a matter of trial and error and imagination.
And one of the directions we got from Alfonso was that these guys are not in a hurry. They've got lots of time. There's no sense of urgency, so the character and the cloth had to emote that sort of feeling. So we went through quite a lot of iterations to give that sort of performance from the character and from the cloth.
ILM, through many, many tests, came up with a fabric look. It was phenomenal.
Accurate. Exactly what is that?
That, Ron, is a hippogriff.
A hippogriff, as described in the book, is a combination of several creatures. When you send off your artists to go and do conceptual designs, Alfonso gave them a guideline of what he was looking for, plus they had the description from the book.
That was actually a very interesting process to see how the conceptual artists worked. I thought it was easier. And then I started going to the office of the designers, and I would see all these skeletons. They had skeletons of birds and skeletons of horses. And they were having meetings with physiologists and veterinarians, and says, what is that for? He says, well, I mean, if it was just a picture you draw, you can do whatever you want. The problem is that this is going to be a 3D character that is going to be moving. So we have to start from the bones.
We did motion tests. One of the first things we did was we went to the computer and said, okay, if it's a horse back end and a bird front legs, how does it move, and how does it run, and how does it fly?
I think it was very clear from the beginning that Alfonso had a very definite vision about how he wanted Buckbeak to be as a character, and our challenge was to interpret that. So we do a lot of tests before we actually start really working on the movie about what kind of animal is it? You know, is he excitable? Is he sad? Is he, you know, how do you show that in a shot?
I remember the very early animations, and it was like a puppy. Just jumping, you know, very light and poppy and playful. He says, no, I mean, this is like a baby. Buckbeak is a grown-up, and also is a sloppy.
I think he was once described as a sloppy teenager, and so we kind of did a lot of development in the early days to try and combine those characteristics. It was pretty tricky.
The amazing thing is it was really a long process of defining. Pretty much it was the same shot that we'll redo over and over, each time with a little different character. And there was a point in which they nailed it.
Every hippogriff scene was storyboarded because the cost of each shot is not inconsiderable. Once the previs was finalized, then we shot those scenes.
Very good.
When Dan has to interact with the hippogriff, we actually have props that can give him something to interact with. So for that scene, we actually had a beak on a stick that he could touch and caress that we would then replace with the CG hippogriff.
Ready and action.
The complication of the flight was how to get Harry to interact and look like he was really riding the creature. And the way we went about that was we developed a motion rig that he would ride, which would actually have the animation driving it, so that his actions would also match the actions of the animation. And then we have the moments where he's flying over the castle, which is this huge-scale model that was built and photographed at a studio. So there's all these different pieces, and part of our job is obviously to put them together in a way that makes it all believable.
Then it started becoming like an automatic thing. It was about suggesting fun stuff that he could be doing.
Now, you have to let him make the first move.
If you watch carefully, in the paddock scene, we have an animated hippogriff poop shot.
I think that we can lay claim to it being the first time that a CG animal has actually done that on screen.
Yeah, nearly there.
This particular buckbeak is our number 3 buckbeak, and he was designed to be in the backgrounds of shots where he's a reference for all the CG work, because of course, if it's a CG creature, it's not there, and the kids have nothing to perform against, and if you can put something like this there, then the kids know exactly what they're dealing with and can react to it.
The thing.
He was difficult because every material we used, we had to be sure could be matched by the CG guys. The manufacturing period was 4.5 months of solid work. The hippogriff skin is a tailored lycra, but over that is a feather skin. Each feather has been individually artworked by a team of people over months. And of course, everything we build is a prototype. So we don't know when we start exactly how we're going to build it. We have to try mocking things up, see how it works, hoping we reach the end of the road before it's time to shoot it. If a creature has to perform on location, you've got to figure out how you get him there, how he's going to behave within that environment. It's a nightmare because it's not something you can service. You can't run off to the nearest shop and buy a new part.
This board seems okay.
It's incredibly labour-intensive, incredibly specialised work to make it move correctly.
Buckbeak was a phenomenal piece of design. I mean, how the hell those guys do it. I mean, it's got like 5,000 electric motors in it making it do. I mean, at times, you'd look at it and it'd be moving its head and blinking. You think just any moment it's going to stand up and fly off.
It's meant to be the most haunted building in Britain. Did I mention that?
Twice. The Shrieking Shack is on a mountainside outside Hogwarts and is racked by the wind and the blizzard, and it moves.
Inside the Shrieking Shack, things like doorways and windows were actually triangulating. So it became quite an interesting construction for us, as well as the construction department, to try and make all these things come alive.
So we had to build a frame that would move backwards and forwards that we could then build the set inside. And this, of course, had to be completely safe because the actors were, and the crew were in it throughout the scene.
Welcome to the night bus. Emergency transport for a stranded witch or wizard.
The night bus was particularly interesting for us to actually achieve a bus of such height. We cut a bus in half, lifted it, and then constructed the middle section. It was found that a normal London bus was going to be too slow for the sequence, so we obviously had to make a bus that could produce probably twice the speed.
The other thing is that every move that we made, it was like a circus moving, because there was this whole entourage driving all around London. Every time it goes round a corner and it rocks one way and then it rocks back the other. They wanted everything in the bus to be rocking, including the actors inside.
3, 2, 1, go!
We built an interior that was mounted on top of a hydraulically controlled motion base. This allows us to move the bus from side to side under controlled conditions. It just allows the unit to shoot inside and get the shots that you wouldn't be able to get out in the streets.
Come on, man, I have a pedicure at 2. Hurry up.
I wanted Hogwarts and Scotland, where we shot, to have like really a predominant role in this film. So we would see the characters together with a very sharp and huge Hogwarts in the background, or the really dramatic landscape of Scotland.
It was decided that we would go to Scotland in May, because it's the month when the sun shines. They haven't had rain for the last 3,000 years, and it rained every day for 28 days.
And literally the set would, be washing out from under us. And at lunch, we'd have to have helicopter dropping gravel and have the crew put gravel back in underneath to keep the dirt from washing out from the set, and we'd bring everybody back up and try and work. I was concerned, about, what does this do to the look? Although Alfonso and Michael literally said that, they felt like it was the best look we could have actually come up with for the movie.
It was phenomenal. We had this soft grey, overcast Scottish light, which dramatically for the story is brilliant. No, it was a nightmare getting it, but worth it.
Yeah, this is a cool thing. Yeah!
The universe of Harry Potter is a universe that was very eloquent. So I felt very comfortable to play in that universe.
Each day is an adventure, and you never tire of it. It's a great world to be a part of.
Woo!